point, the kind of two big events for Christians to celebrate would be the coming of Christ and the resurrection and his resurrection, death and resurrection. Those would be the two kind of pillar moments of the life of Christ that Christians would think about. And so Easter was on a set date because of Passover. And the early church wrestled with kind of when do we celebrate the birth of Christ? No thinking person. I remember not growing up in a Christian home, and somebody told me after I became a Christian that, well, none of it's true. Jesus wasn't even born on Christmas, as if that was supposed to have been and I thought, well, then how can we believe anything if that's the case? Now you're telling me there's not a Santa Claus? But no one really believed that, no one historically believed that Jesus was born on Christmas Day. Christmas, or that time of the year, is the winter solstice. And that's the darkest day, that's the shortest day of the year. And there was already pagan celebrations around that day, Roman celebrations or festivals around that darkest day. And so the early Christians growing up in that culture, how do you redeem celebrations of the darkest day? Well, you celebrate the coming of light. And so the beautiful picture of, sometimes when you see Christians celebrating Reformation Day on Halloween, sometimes my cynical side goes, just let them have their Halloween, and but there's something about the culture is celebrating. Let's give them something really to celebrate about. And so the early Christmas, the reason that it was chosen to celebrate it on those days, is because the darkest day of the year, or the shortest time of light of the year, is at the winter solstice. And so they said, there's not a better time to celebrate the coming of light into the world than on the day that it is darkest. And so that's how Christmas becomes the celebration of the birth of Christ, not because we've got a birthday that we found proof, we found the cradle, and we found a little notepad with the shepherds writing on it, and we know that it's that day. Jesus was probably born in the spring, but that's something that God chose not to mark in the way that he marked Passover or some of the other things. So that's the beginning. That's why Christmas is a time of celebration. Is that it was a dark time in our culture, but with the coming of Christ, we want it to be a time of light. But Advent itself, it goes back as early as 380. There was a council in 380 that was struggling with a heresy called Priscillism. And Priscillism is not related to anybody named Priscilla. It's related to it's a Gnostic belief that nothing good could come from the human body, that there's nothing. It takes the idea of the total depravity of man to an extreme, that nothing physical could have anything beautiful about it or good about it. And so that was a battle with Gnosticism in the early church in terms of the philosophy that people had. And so this group was fighting this belief that this very extreme view that nothing good could come from God's physical created world. And so what is a better way, what's the most redeeming thing about humanity, or one of the most redeeming things about God's creation, is that he chose to come in incarnation, that Jesus becomes flesh and dwells among us. And so there's some early desert fathers that would, because the earliest dating of this would be that in that 380 to 400 time period, there's some writings where some monks would agree to fast every day for 25 days before Christmas. And that was kind of the idea of preparing themselves for Christmas. But beyond that, there's not, it was never stated, be aware that the whole idea of Advent is extra biblical. It's not in the Bible. You're not going to find a place in the Bible where anybody celebrated Advent. The word Advent comes from the idea of, it would be translated as coming, and historically, because the word used, we go through two languages here. Adventus would be the Latin, and the Greek word that's used for that is a word that's used for both the first coming of Christ and the second coming. And so traditionally what would happen is the first 2 weeks of what they called Advent, the first 2 weeks of that they called Advent would focus on the coming, Christ's second coming, and the second 2 weeks of Advent would focus on his first coming, or the incarnation. And so that's not been what we've mostly done. If those that are paying real close attention realize that I didn't even try to say the Greek word, because I always butcher that so much but I've got it written here. I'll tell you if you really want to try it. I found, why would we celebrate Advent? And a lot of Protestant churches are doing that, and I think one of the reasons that it's something positive for Christians to do in light of the materialism, in light of they're stealing our Christmas. We can't say Christmas. They replaced Christ with Xmas, and some of that kind of angry stuff that you hear the Christians saying every Christmas. And if you want to say those things, go ahead, but it's not all that helpful to the people that don't know Jesus for us to hear them. There's just an attack on Christmas. And then people look around and go, looks to me like there's a lot of Christmas stuff going on. And what we really are saying is there's attack on the real meaning of Christmas. And so one way to kind of change that narrative is to do something positive around that is not so materialistic and so focused on self. And Advent helps do that. I found in the Desiring God Ministries, which is John Piper's ministry, which often puts out some good material. They have an article on 7 reasons Christians should celebrate Advent. I just thought I'd share those with you. The first one they would say is Advent reminds us that we are not the center of God's plan. I think there is a part of all of us that are so self-absorbed that we kind of think it's all about me. It's all about us. The purpose of marriage is for me to be happy. The purpose of children is to do chores for their parents. The purpose of God's plan is me. The focus on the Bible is me. To interpret the Bible correctly, you've got to see it as theocentrically. That the purpose of the Bible, though practically it gives us incredible truths for us to live by, you aren't the point of the Bible. God is the point of the Bible. The Bible is God's revealed propositional truth about himself to a dying world. So the Bible is supposed to be saying something about who God is to us. But we so often turn it around with, it's about me. It's about me. And so Advent, to celebrate Advent in your family and the church, it's an opportunity to refresh your perspective that God has a grand plan for history that is much larger than you and your kin, which we tend to focus on. Advent reminds us of the generations of saints that longed for the Messiah. Generation after generation after generation of Jewish people pined and longed for the first coming. How long must we wait? How long must we be slaves to the Pharaoh? How long? And so you get this, it reminds us of the generation of saints that longed for Messiah. We can imagine ourselves with that that hope, but then also the having to wait. 3, Advent connects you to centuries of church tradition. A lot of times, especially American evangelicalism, it's almost like the church of what's happening now. I mean, it's like, there were churches before there were smoke machines and drums. There were churches before there were, clever guys in skinny jeans singing songs really cool. There was, when you worship today and you sing, be aware, if you listen with your heart, you'll hear centuries of the echo of voices of saints that have gone before you. This is not just a Johnny-come-lately religion for the day. This is a God who, at the beginning of the universe, at the beginning of the creation of earth, said, I'm going to, and when sin entered in, I'm going to redeem creation back in myself, and a plan that has gone from there till here that you have been a part of. And there are, when you say the Lord's Prayer, when you sing today, just stop for a moment and think about the fact that we are not a part of God's first rodeo. We are a part of a long line of His children that have praised Him and waited and hoped and longed for His, and we are to, anyway, as the church of old, as God's people of old longed for the first coming of Christ, we're to have that same longing and anticipation for the second. 4th, Advent brings us slowness in the midst of a frantic season. I was, last week, I printed out a paper's calendar because just kind of seeing it, I wanted to see it all in front of me, and just marking everything that needs to take place between now and Christmas in our lives. I'm going to be in Charlotte again this week from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and just looking at all the people, the pastors that are coming in for kind of intensive counseling and regular counseling stuff, and I just was trying to fit everything in, and when the kids would be here and when they wouldn't, and I thought, wow, what a busy season. It's funny, most pastors I know don't like Christmas because of the busyness of it. There's more services, more things to plan, more things to take care of, and so Advent brings us slowness down. Related to that, the Advent teaches us patience. I told you the story of the first time there was an Advent calendar in our family, and I'm 7 or 8 years old, and I go straight to 25 and look and see what's going to happen. We are not by nature very patient people. And God has been incredibly patient with us. And the invitation to be more like Christ is to be somebody who's marked by patience. It's amazing to me how mad I get at my phone. And I have a phone that I can right now text my wife, and that message will go from here to a satellite back down to, or at least a cell tower, and from that point I'm not going to look over at Sean Gleason because he knows how it probably works and I don't. But it's amazing to me that I can make a phone call all over the world, and somehow from this little phone it'll go up to a satellite, to another satellite, down to a phone in wherever. And if it ever doesn't work, I go, this is a bunch of junk. What's wrong with this? It's like, how impatient have we become? You go to a fast food restaurant, and you have to wait a little bit. And you're like, I can't believe this. And it's like, you're driving through a drive-through, and you're getting your food in less than 2 minutes, and you're going, can't believe I'm waiting in this line. We are notoriously impatient. And it's a great thing to do with your children, with your family, to kind of celebrate the idea of we're gonna slowly engage the process of celebrating Christmas. And so not only does it slow it down, it also teaches us patience. It also, and this I'll probably read more than, Advent demonstrates a rare jewel of Christian discontentment. The Puritan author wrote the rare jewel of Christian contentment, and that's what we usually talk about, the fact that there is a rare jewel worth cultivating, that Christians should be content. However, there's also an idea that in the Christian world that we should not be content with this world, that there's something about this that doesn't fully satisfy. And so by going through this longer process to get you ready for Christmas, and ultimately that's all Advent is. And don't, if you miss a day, God is not a formulaic God who will, who's waiting for you to say the right word so he can do something. He's the God of the universe. And so, but all the Advent is supposed to do, whether you're using the Advent wreaths or a calendar or one of the devotional books, all it's supposed to do is get you and your family to put Christmas or Christ coming into focus. And to get you ready for Christmas. Advent fortifies our confidence in the promises of God. It's just helpful in this time where you would think the most important thing is to get ready for Christmas, whatever that means. But most people, you say, what's getting you ready for Christmas? They think about, did I get the gifts that I thought it? Have I bought all the gifts that I have, as opposed to getting you ready for the celebration of Christ's coming. Traditionally, Advent has it's the 4 weeks before Christmas, and each week has a different theme. And again, it's extra biblical. But typically the first 2 weeks tend to be about his second coming, and the second 2 weeks about his first coming. And so week 1 usually is about hope. And I would suggest to you that most people are afraid to get their hopes up. They're afraid of hope. They don't want to. I mean, how often have you read scripture and you said, "Oh Lord, what if this really is true?" And the hope of the gospel. And the hope that he is returning. That's really true. So the first week, the theme is supposed to be about hope. And so this week, what I want you to be thinking about is, what are your hopes in? What do you really hope for? I think I sometimes hope for, I've never been good at cutting my grass. And yet, oddly enough, I have this hope that someday I'll have a farm. I don't think I'd be a very good farmer. I think that's kind of a foolish hope, quite frankly, but it's and I think, why would I have my hope in something material like that? I think we often do. And so hope, reminding us what our hope is in, what we're really hoping for, what are we really counting on, is kind of the focus of the first week. Second week, and that's sometimes called the prophecy candle, when you light candles. The second one is week 2 is faith. That's sometimes called the Bethlehem candle. Week 3 is the joy candle. Week 4 is the peace candle, sometimes called the angel's candle. And then on Christmas, the Christ candle, which is usually a different color when they do that. So again, I don't really care about the traditions. It's not biblical, it's extra biblical. But I do care that we as a community get ready for Christmas. That we remember that he's coming again. And remember that it's not about us, but about him. And remember and celebrate that we are not in an abandoned world. It's one of my favorite bumper stickers on a really bad car. It'll sometimes say, they'll either say, my other car is a, and then it says some nice car. It'll sometimes say, this is not an abandoned car. And Christmas is a bumper, if God were into bumper stickers, which I don't think he is, based on the people I see driving cars with Christian bumper stickers on them. But it is ultimately God's statement is this is not an abandoned world. I have not left you to your own vices. I've come, and I will come again. And that's what Advent's about, and that's why we're going to celebrate it this year.